You're listening to the Brand Ed Podcast with Robby Fowler, episode 16, entitled 7 Lessons for Personal Brands and Business Leaders. Welcome to the Brand Ed Podcast with Robby Fowler, the show that helps you build a life-giving personal brand and business. I believe the chaos and confusion around branding, marketing, and business strategy leads to burnt-out leaders, underperforming businesses, and life-draining brands. The best way forward is to connect your branding, marketing, and business strategy together so you can become a better leader, build a stronger business, and bless the customers you serve. Welcome to today's episode. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a little different. We've been walking through what I call the radical empathy brand framework. It's really the various pieces you need in order to understand, market, and brand your personal business, or if you're a small business leader, or you started your own business, or you're an entrepreneur. Those are the different pieces that you need to have in place in order to really go market, brand, and grow your business and grow yourself as a leader, not to leave yourself out. And so today, what I wanted to do is, now that we're, obviously several episodes into the podcast, I wanted to peel the curtain back a little bit and share just a little bit more about me and about my story. And then what I want to do is really kind of wrap that around 7 takeaways that I jotted down. Just 7 things I've learned from doing this that I hope would resonate with you, that you'll connect with and grab hold of, and will serve you and help you as you try to grow your own personal brand or grow and market and brand your business. So I'm just going to share briefly a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to run through kind of seven takeaways. So I'm not going to take a huge deep dive, but like many folks I talk to that wind up starting a personal brand, or maybe they're an entrepreneur, or they've started their own business, the path to get there is rarely a direct line. In fact, what I've found is most often, it's a zigzag, and that's certainly true in my own story. I did not wake up, at 8 years old and think, one day I want to have my own business or personal brand. Some people do that, but that actually wasn't my story. In fact, my story started out, if I just rewind kind of the clock back to high school days, I can remember I grew up kind of in a small town in Texas, north of Dallas. It was a suburb of Dallas. It is not small now, but it was small when I was in high school back then. And the first real kind of choice for me was the classic small town choice between sports and music. So for me, I was pretty decent at sports, but I was a little better at music. And so as I started to get older in high school, I had to make that choice. Like, one of these is going to help me probably get into college and maybe even pay for some of college. Which of those 2 options is most likely going to be, the better option to open those doors for me? And so I made the choice to do music. In fact, so I go off to college, and my thought was I was going to be a band director. And because that was an important, part of my own life. So fast forward the tape a little bit into college, I got involved in some summer camp ministry, and really just kind of through that process, now was looking at a different choice. So now I'm entering into, I think it was my 3rd year of college, and I'm feeling like, well, maybe what lies ahead is actually more ministry, not band director. And therefore that would be, postgraduate studies at something like a seminary. And so I decided to do that, and actually switched from band director, you'd be a music ed major to a music composition major. So if we just pause the story right there, I'm talking to you about personal brands, and I just admitted I went to college to be a band director, and by the time I'm done, I'm a music composition major, right? It's not the most direct path. And then when I get done at school in undergrad, I had some different plans. That didn't really work out. I thankfully got married to my lovely bride. Still married to this day. We celebrated 25. We're on our way to 26 years. So this was a while ago. So I graduated in 95, I believe, undergrad. I go off to grad school and go into, preparing for like full-time paid ministry, go do that for a little while. And then some other circumstances kind of come up. And now I'm in this spot where I'm making a decision now. Hey, do I pursue another, paid ministry position, or do I take a break from that and go do something out in, the business, on the business side? And so I wind up doing that. And I can remember I got a job at a startup company. And I can remember going into the office the first day, just being absolutely terrified, because at this point I had gone straight from undergrad to grad school. And all I had ever done was predominantly music classes in undergrad. When you're a music major, it is just tons and tons of music and not a whole lot else outside of music classes. I mean, like bare minimum. I think I took one math class, 0 business classes, not any. One computer class. I didn't have any other, computer stuff. So I remember going into the office at first day of work. It's a startup company, and in the technology space. And whole nother crazy story about how I even, got that job. But there I am, and I just remember sitting there and kind of thinking to myself, like, just an initial panic. So I got there early. I got there like earlier than, pretty much anyone else got there. So I'm just sitting in the front little reception area because I don't even know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know if I have an office or cubicle or what the deal is. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my, like, what have I done? Why would they hire me? What do I know? I'm like a music major with a theology graduate degree. I like I said, not a single business class. I've never really, I don't think I'd ever stepped foot in a corporate office up to that point. And, it was just crazy. So fast forward the tape a little bit more. I'm in the startup company and I start to really enjoy it. I was responsible for some training around our technology product that we offered, and really started to love it and kind of to thrive, and really had a whole nother skill set. Some things that I had kind of messed with back doing some ministry stuff, but really gelled. And so that started to bring in some design. I was kind of doing some graphic design. I was doing some communication, a little bit of, marketing and branding stuff. And then what happened, the technology company, we were a technology company, .com, in the kind of .com space, serving the hospitality industry. And then 9/11 hit. And when 9/11 hit, it was not good for .com startups looking for investment money like this company was. The hospitality industry came to a screeching halt, right? Because nobody was traveling and everybody cinched their belt and they weren't spending a dime, certainly not on our technology product that was aimed at the hospitality sector. And so, it wasn't too long after that until I ultimately got laid off because the startup company closed. We couldn't keep going. And that's when I started my personal brand. And so I knew when 9/11 hit, literally that next day, even though technically I still had a job, as I was driving to work the next day, I can remember thinking, I'm going to need a plan B big time. And that's really when I started thinking about my own personal brand. Like, I think I could maybe go do this for myself. I could take some of those skills I'd learned, some of the kind of skills around design and branding and marketing. And I think I could maybe try to make a go of this, because I'm going to need to do something. At the time, had one child, and my daughter was very young, and my son, we found out actually on 9/11, we went and had the first sonogram and found out that he was going to be a boy. So I remember those times. I remember how stressed I was. And so started something that was called 180 Communications, not the most creative thing. And I still have the little landing page. So I'll put that in the show notes. I'll link to my About page, and you can kind of read some of this. But on my About page, I have like the little placeholder page I built for 180 Communications. I'm not super proud of it. I look at it now and go, good Lord, that's not great. But hey, it worked. Okay. And so then, fast forward, and what really happened from that point forward is I did a couple of other stints at one or two other startup companies, and also back into some church plants. So that's kind of where I found myself. I was in a church plant, which is essentially a startup, or a startup company, or working for myself doing this business that eventually just became my own personal brand, Robby Fowler. And wherever I was along that journey, even if I was at a startup company or if I was doing, paid church ministry, I always had this business. And so I was always doing it full-time or part-time since 2001, long before I'd ever even heard of the term personal brand. I didn't even know what that term was. So that's the real quick, backstory, not a direct path. If we were to recap, a guy goes to small town school, goes off to college to be a music education major so he can be a band director, switches to music composition, thinking, I'm probably going to go actually into ministry and go to, graduate school and go to seminary. So I don't need all those education classes. I'll do something, a little more fun. I really just needed a degree to take the next step to get into grad school. Do that, go to grad school. It was a long haul. The grad school I chose was like a whole another 4 years. It was a really long master's program. Do all that, and not by my own plan. Just life happens, and I wind up in a startup company. And then 9/11 hits, and I'm like, when 9/11 hit, if you were to look at my resume, you would say a music major, a master's in theology, about a year and a half worth of business experience. Totally scattershoot random. So what have I learned from then until now that I would pass on to you? Maybe some takeaways, hopefully that would resonate with you. And so here are a few of those takeaways. Here are 7 things that I just jotted down as I thought about, so what have I learned along the way? And one of those things, number one, is, and I was actually recording another podcast episode that will be coming up fairly soon. It's my first interview, my first guest, and he and I were talking earlier today. And this is something he mentioned, which I thought is a great way to do this or to put this. But, write down or find out what you're good at. If you're thinking about, I don't know if I should start a personal brand. I don't know if my personal brand's a good fit. I don't know if I am an entrepreneur. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Or maybe you're already an entrepreneur or business, and you're thinking, I really enjoy what I've been doing for the last 8 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever. I'd like to kind of capitalize on this and turn this into something, more than just this business. Like, I'd like to go help other leader start a similar business or do something like I've doing. I'd like to keep doing this, but also help others start. So wherever you are, here's just one good takeaway. Make a note of what you're good at, like what you're already doing right now in your line of work, and then scratch out or separate that from your profession. So if you take me, for example, you would look back and go, well, here's a guy that has, like when I was a music composition major, I remember sitting in a library, hand writing out orchestral scores. Okay. There's not a lot of jobs I'm going to get hired to say, hey, by the way, are you good with a score? But what can I write down from that? I could say, in order for me to be able to do that, that means I'm for sure creative. Okay. Regardless of if that's in the realm of music or I'm a composer in the future or something like that. Separate what you can do, some kind of proven skills that you have from whatever your profession is. And that can help you get perspective and help you know what to focus on and kind of major on. So even if you already have your own business, you would, or your personal brand, hey, make sure I'm sticking to these things because these things I'm good at. When it was in the ministry context, teaching, I was doing that a lot. Leading teams, I was obviously, that was a big part of what I did. Putting systems in place, that was a big part of what I did. Lots and lots of creativity and communication, that was a big part of what I did. So that would be an example of writing down what you're doing, what you enjoy doing, where you see results or, fruit, or people ask you more or ask you to do those kinds of things. Write those down and then separate that, like scratch out the part that's connected to your particular profession, because there's a very good chance you can take those and apply those other places. That's one lesson that I've learned along the way, is rather than to go, well, none of that mattered, I didn't take any business classes. Trust me, all of the time I spent in grad school on communication and preaching and putting things and organizing things into like a sermon that makes sense to people, that I use that same skill every single day. When I'm working with like a brand on this, we might say, like, as a brand, what is your superpower? So write down a few of those superpowers that, other people might look at and go, man, it's not fair. It's not fair that you're bulletproof, or it's not fair that you're that creative, or it's not fair that you're that good of a writer. It's not fair that, man, you can just talk to anybody. So write some of those down. The second takeaway that I would give you that I've learned is, particularly as you get started, think holistically, not just specialty. Think holistically, not just specialty. So be curious beyond your specialization. So if you're a realtor, be curious outside of real estate. Think holistically. There's things you could pick up from all kinds of other places that might totally transform the way you market or think about your marketing or your branding or something you do with a client or potential customer. Okay, so think holistically, not just in your specialty. That would apply for also, like, if you've connected with a particular framework or guru, just think wider. Be curious, be a learner outside of whatever your area is. I want to start a business doing XYZ. Great. Do it, but don't just only hang out with those kinds of people. Okay. Lesson number 3. So number 1, what are you good at separate from your profession? What are some of your superpowers? Number 2, think holistically, not just specialty. Number 3, ask why. That kind of goes along with number 2. Ask why. That will particularly help with strategy. I need a new website. You know how many times people tell me that? My question always is why? And usually they don't know beyond, like, I don't know. I just, like, my either I don't have one and I know I need one because I'm trying to get in business or start a personal brand, or, well, mine is just terrible. Okay. If we don't know why you need a new one and what to aim it at, then we're just going to wind up with you paying money for a fancier website that still doesn't do anything, doesn't work, doesn't help you grow your business. So that's a huge one. Ask why, like be a why asking person, because it's just too easy to go out to the specialist or the gurus or whatever. Everybody's going to tell you what to do. The problem is you can't do all of that. So at some point you need to start learning to answer the question, ask and answer the question why for your own brand and for your own business. Takeaway number 4, realize that the rest of the world sees things differently than you. So your perspective on whatever it is, when you're talking to the general public, customers, whatever, you're probably the minority. So if you're an Enneagram person, for example, I'm an Enneagram 5. Well, I got to realize when I'm talking to customers, I'm not just talking to a bunch of Enneagram 5s. So just realize that the rest of the world sees things differently than you. That can be so huge and helpful for your business, how you do marketing and say things, the way you build and think about your brand or strategy. Hey, not everyone sees the world the same way that I do. Okay, takeaway number 5, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Number 5, your strange path that has got you to wherever you are today, or maybe what you want to start tomorrow, your strange path isn't actually that strange. Again, the interview I did earlier today, he said the exact same thing that I often say, like, because this is a weird trajectory. You would never draw out what I do today. You would never say, hey, if you want to do that, you wouldn't tell a 14-year-old, if that's what you want to be one day, here's how you get there. Go spend 2 years in pursuit of music education. But then what I want you to do is sneak in a little music composition, then head off to seminary. Now, remember, don't take any business classes whatsoever. Nothing in computers. Don't learn how to do any of that. My path is not the path you would choose to say, if you want to do that one day, then start doing that now. And the reality is when you start talking to other personal brands, business leaders, entrepreneurs, not always, but that's actually the norm. The norm is, man, I meandered and all of that collectively, it's really weird, but now I do this. Okay. So your strange path actually isn't that strange. And here's another thing. It's not a disadvantage. It's not a disadvantage. In fact, I want you to flip the way you think about it and say it's actually an advantage. It's all of my, music. That's creativity. That's like learning a whole new language. All of that training I did, that's you. I learned in seminary, I learned how to take, like, we're wrestling with the big questions in the universe, and I'm having to take things that are really, really complicated and make them understandable in, a sermon or a class or a handout or whatever. So that doesn't intimidate me anymore. I work with clients all the time. I worked recently in the past, 6 months, I've worked with someone in the genome sequencing business sector. I don't know anything about that, clearly. I worked with someone who is a complex hernia specialist doing abdominal wall reconstruction, all words I didn't even know a few months ago. But I know that I can hear and take complex things and make it understandable. And that's why they hired me. Okay, so your strange path isn't strange. It's actually the norm usually. That's actually far more the norm. It's not a disadvantage. In fact, I want you to think about, how you use it. Because oftentimes it's actually part of what makes you good at what you do, is the strange path you've taken to get there. Number 6, everybody needs help, period. Everybody needs help. So if you need help with your business, reach out to me. I'd love to help. I needed help. So I've joined masterminds. I've bought classes. Everybody needs help. Nobody knows how to do all of this. Nobody. So get the kind of help that you need. So know yourself and know where you need help. Get the kind of help you need, because everybody, every personal brand, every entrepreneur, every business, every leader, everybody needs help. So make sure you get the help that you need. Last, number 7, not all entrepreneurs or guys and gals that start personal brands or business leaders are the same. They're not all the same. I tend to find myself swimming in waters that are filled with, it's true, there's a lot, if we're speaking Enneagram, there's lots of 8s that start. There's some 7s that start. There's some 3s that are like super efficient that go out and crush it. And they start things. And I'm not any of those things. And that's okay. If you want to go, if you're not one of those and you're like, yeah, but can I do this? You may or may not. I'm not telling you that, you have to, you should. I'm just saying not everybody is the same. So if you're like me and probably a little bit more of the minority, Enneagram 5, first of all, go watch the Bill Gates Netflix documentary. It's fascinating because he's in Enneagram 5. It's just a different look at, there's someone who maybe is more like me, or, however you may be wired, that can go do this. So not all are the same. Now, a lot of the ones kind of out front that we might attach to or be drawn to, they can be in larger numbers, those things like on the Enneagram, but you don't have to feel the freedom to be you and still be able to do something. You might not do it as big or glamour or whatever as him or her, but don't let that alone. I'm not a high D person. Okay, well, that may be wise for you to not start something, but don't just say, high D people are the only ones that do this, and I'm not one. Or Enneagram 8s or 3s are the only ones that go out, and I'm not one of those. So I guess I can't go do this, okay? That's not true. So there's the 7 quick takeaways. Find out what you're good at, separate it from your profession. That's your superpower. Think holistically beyond whatever your specialty is. Always ask why. Be the kind of person that asks why. Realize that the rest of the world sees things differently than you. That includes, anybody, any vendors you work with, subcontractors, customers, everybody. The next one, your strange path isn't actually that strange, and it's not a disadvantage. I encourage you to actually use that. Number 6 was everybody needs help, so make sure you're getting the kind of help you need to grow your business. And the last one, not all personal brands or entrepreneurs or business leaders are the same, so feel the freedom to start, even if you don't fit the mold. All right, well, thanks so much for joining me on this episode. That gives you peels the curtain back a little bit, hopefully on me. And on the next episode, we're going to take a look into all of those things, how they shape what I call my manifesto. I actually created a manifesto. It's the Life-Giving Brand Manifesto. We'll dive into what that is and how it came about and in the next episode. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in. I will put links to a few of those screenshots and that kind of stuff in the show notes and my about page, where you can kind of go read a little bit more of the fuller story. But hey, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love for you to share this. If there's somebody that that is trying to start something, trying to create a personal brand as a business leader, go ahead and share this episode with them. You can just click the up arrow on your phone. If you're listening to this on your phone, there's the little up arrow to share things, and just text it to them right now. And hopefully that will be encouraging to them. Thanks so much again for joining me on this episode of the Brand Ed Podcast. Until next time, go and build a life-giving brand.